factors influencing teacher quality and effectiveness, I felt that we want to look at the interactions of lots of dimensions that are important for a high quality and effective teacher workforce. And I'm going to begin by discussing how induction relates to each of these three areas. So for example, on the left, professional knowledge and practices, induction is a part of the continuum of teacher development. It's situated between initial preparation and then the ongoing professional learning that happens throughout teachers' careers. The induction years are a unique phase in teacher development when these new people take on the full-time responsibilities of being a teacher while they're still really learning to teach. So there's many demands on these individuals. So what happens during the induction period is critical in helping them become more effective, but this experience can also strengthen or weaken their commitment to teaching. Working conditions on the right also play a critical role in induction, as the characteristics of the school culture, the principal support, the collegial context, and the demands placed on special educations play a role in what they can accomplish in their schools. Even the best prepared teacher can't accomplish what they need to without certain conditions in place. So at the bottom, we have shortages and surpluses, and induction also influences teacher supply and demand. If teachers are really supported, they'll be retained for longer periods, the data show, and this decreases the demands for new teachers, which is very important right now, especially in this time of teacher shortage. In the middle, we have state departments, IHEs, districts, and schools, and all have roles in teacher induction. In an NCEP study on state department induction policy, Sindelar and his colleagues pointed out that state policy is important because it supports districts in the design of induction programs and often offers other supplemental resources. IHEs also play key roles as well, and there's a number of examples in the literature about how IHEs and districts partner together. And I'm going to share one piece of new data that I have on some work that I've been doing. Using the new SAS, which is now called the National Teacher Study, for 2015, 18% of SETs indicated they did not have a mentor. 32% of those who had mentors indicated that it didn't help them improve their teaching very much. So 50% of our new teachers either needed a mentor or needed better mentor support. New teachers are at higher risk of attrition. So I'm showing an old idea here from 1987. Grismer and Kirby said it looked like a U-shaped curve with higher attrition rates among new teachers, lower as teachers entered mid-career, and higher rates near retirement. The story is even harder for special educators because they have among the highest attrition rates. Although Grismer and Kirby described this curve in 1987, we have evidence in every decade since then that SET teachers at the beginning of their careers leave at higher rates than other teachers. So we might say, why are they at risk? Well, some of it's the career stage. They have fewer accrued investments at this point. They may not own homes. They may not have children in school. So the ease of moving or changing careers during the first year probably makes them at risk of leaving. But the one that we can control is the bumpy transition into teaching that many SETs experience, especially due to high demands and the absence of support. Another factor is not being well prepared for those roles. So we have 5 questions. What is induction and what should it achieve? What do we know about new SETs experiences, which can help us inform what types of supports are needed? What induction structures and activities are likely to improve retention and improve SETs effectiveness? And what resources are available to guide induction? So what is induction and what should it achieve? Well, Ingersoll and Strong defined it as a program designed to support new teachers' growth, effectiveness, and retention. So one might think about induction as synonymous with mentoring, but it can be so much more than that. Other examples include collaboration and reduced workload. So the figure at the bottom of this slide suggests that induction goals should be focused on increasing teachers' commitment and retention at the same time that we both support their growth and effectiveness. And there's evidence clearly from general education that induction can improve both instructional effectiveness and retention. And there's some evidence in special education as well.
Special educators are often the only person in their school doing their specific job, whereas general educators have grade level colleagues who may share the same responsibilities as them and who they can therefore go to for advice. Special educators very seldom have a colleague who can provide them with guidance that's specific to their particular roles and responsibilities. Other special educators in the school may not be teaching the same population of students, the same grade levels, or the same content areas. And that's problematic because the expectations for what they should be doing, for what their job should involve, are often defined in really conflicting and ambiguous ways. Core aspects of their work, such as what to teach, how to teach, the time to teach, are often unclear or defined in such conflicting ways as to provide confusing guidance. With regards to what to teach, special educators are required to support student success in both the general education curricula and in the individual student goals on students' IEPs in order to develop student foundational skills. And they often experience confusion about the extent to which they should be focusing their individual student goals versus the general education curricula. Compounding that, they often teach multiple grades and subject areas requiring fluency with multiple different curricula, and yet they often report, especially in their first couple of years, that they struggle to find and access appropriate instructional resources. And often they don't have a set schedule defining when they're teaching what to whom, so they have to kind of figure out, okay, how much time am I going to allocate to these different instructional responsibilities? With regards to how to teach, special educators experience conflicting messages about the extent to which they should be relying on the explicit instructional methods that are typically taught in special education coursework versus the methods that are more often taught in general education content area coursework, such as inquiry-based methods. Those inquiry methods are often reinforced by teacher evaluation instruments, further compounding difficulties that they might have in figuring out exactly what instructional methods they should be using. With regards to time to teach, special educators are often responsible for making their own schedules. And in inclusive settings, this responsibility may require them to negotiate with general education teachers to even access their students so that they can push in, pull out, or co-teach in ways that will allow them to provide their students with instruction. Further complicating this, they have so many other responsibilities, leaving them with limited time to teach. They experience significantly more overwhelming workloads than general education teachers. The imperative to include students in the LRE to the greatest extent possible can place them in positions of conflict with general education teachers, especially if their administrator doesn't provide clear guidance regarding inclusion. This conflict can occur when general educators are reluctant to include their students in meaningful ways. It can occur when general educators don't enact required accommodations or modifications. And it can also occur when general educators don't feel students should be pulled out of gen ed for IEP mandated services. Special educators' role in supporting inclusion creates a lot of potential for conflict with general education teachers. And this conflict can be especially challenging for new special education teachers because they don't yet have relationships with the general educators in their school. Their status as new teachers may not provide them with the kind of social capital to advocate with their colleagues to get access to their students. The good news is that there's a lot that can be done to support special educators in managing those challenges. In particular, they may be able to more effectively negotiate those roles when they experience alignment among the roles that their preparation programs support them to fulfill, the induction experiences provided by the districts, and the instructional conditions within their school. So ideally, pre-service preparation should prepare them with the foundational skills necessary to enact the roles they're likely to need in the roles that they will fulfill in local districts. And then induction should reinforce and build upon what they learned in preparation, not merely duplicate it or worse, potentially even undermine it. Several components of induction can act to reinforce and build upon pre-service preparation. First, formal professional learning experiences, including mentorship and formal induction, can provide deeper pedagogical content knowledge in the specific areas in which they will be teaching. Second, their teacher evaluation instruments and procedures often send new teachers a signal about what they should be doing. For example, what kind of instruction they should be providing. And ensuring that those instruments and procedures are designed or modified to be well aligned with the practices new special educators learn and practice is one potential avenue for reinforcing those practices. And third, new special educators rely on collaboration to accomplish core aspects of their work and to continue learning about effective practice. Teachers become more effective through interactions with skilled colleagues. Well-designed induction can play a role in fostering those collaborative relationships that they need in order to effectively serve students. And finally, even with well-designed preparation and induction that are aligned with one another, special educators may become frustrated if the practices that they're being taught to use are not well supported logistically with the appropriate instructional resources and schedules. For example, a special educator whose pre-service preparation and induction have taught her to provide high-quality explicit instruction may experience a great deal of conflict and frustration if her schedule doesn't provide her with access to small groups who have similar instructional needs, or if her instructional materials promote a very different set of practices. But if preparation, induction, and instructional conditions are well aligned with one another, then special educators can have opportunities to develop initial competence, and then they can actually enact those skills in practice with supportive curricula and schedules. Another way of saying this is that the systems around teachers need to ensure that teachers first have the knowledge and skill to use and apply core instructional practices, and that they experience conditions in their school that support them in enacting those practices in the service of students, as you see at the top. When both of those conditions are met, they're able to use core practices to effectively serve students with disabilities. So that's the ideal condition. In contrast, if they have the knowledge and skill but lack appropriate conditions, that's fertile ground for frustration and attrition. Similarly, if they have the conditions necessary to enact effective practices, but they don't know how to use those conditions to effectively serve students, they're unlikely to be able to take advantage of the time and resources that they've got to effectively support students. And finally, someone who has neither the appropriate conditions nor the knowledge and skill is unlikely to be able to effectively serve students.
What core instructional practices might help induction programs and serve as a framework for special education teacher induction? So, for example, evidence-based practices is one possibility, or state or district frameworks, which some are already using, and some have individualized ones as well. But one of the issues comes with alignment. For example, if new SETs are taught one set of practices in initial preparation, and then they encounter very different expectations in their first year, it makes their jobs harder. They've got to figure out how to teach. The top box of this slide identifies some of these, and we're going to talk about a few others. A clear instructional framework can focus new teachers' attention to strong practices. If it's aligned with PD, it begins to provide a shared language about instruction, which may facilitate conversations between SETs, their mentors, and leaders. The new teacher induction standards also emphasize the importance of strong instructional guidelines for new teachers. And when these are aligned, it's even better, because that way they're not having to deal with two sets of standards. The second half of the slide shows examples of instructional frameworks used in SET induction. I'm sharing these because there are very few examples of special education induction focused on instructional frameworks or even effectiveness, so these are worth a read. The first is an interesting study by Israel and her colleagues, including Paul. They studied the Danielson's framework for teaching, widely used across the country in formative and a summative evaluation that includes several domains. They reported that mentors evaluated new teachers using the framework, and then they used that data to inform the supports provided to the teacher, showing the interrelationships of the framework to mentoring and evaluation. However, the framework was also used quite flexibly, and emotional support and other teacher needs were integrated into this framework. So we're worried about things being too strict, not allowing it to take a look at the specific context teachers are in. So that provides an example that seemed to work fairly well. The second framework is specific to a district as well, and Kamen and Long provided an in-depth description of one district's program, the Special School District of St. Louis County, or SSD program. The program provided an instructional framework unique to the district to guide new teachers' development over several years. And the instructional framework was aligned with professional development, with mentoring, and other collaborative supports, providing the most intense version of induction that I've seen in the literature. They also report strong induction outcomes for the program. And these two examples I have identified under the references, but I think they're worth a read because they show how all of these come together for specific districts. The third framework is one Liz and Nate Jones and I have developed as we see an opportunity to use the new high leverage practices that are adopted by the Council for Exceptional Children as an instructional framework for induction. And this framework has the potential for coordination across varied agencies. So this induction program begins with an instructional framework, in this case, high leverage practices, which include 22 practices that address collaboration, assessment, social emotional development, and of course, instruction. And all of these are directly matched to the kind of work that we hope as special educators will do in school. So if this were used and teachers were introduced to some of these high leverage practices in their preparation, as they enter schools, they recognize these practices. And then if mentors and PD supports help them continue to develop these HLPs, we might have a better chance of having some coherence across these things. Also, this helps address the problem Liz talked about how to teach, because they're given some support with that. Mentoring can also support teachers' growth as they use these HLPs to teach particular content, the content that they're teaching, supporting teachers' decisions about what to teach, linking instruction to content. And the right-hand side of the middle box refers to those working conditions, because again, we don't want teachers in the position to teaching them really effective practices, but that not allowing them to have the ability to use these practices. The importance of collaboration, again, is shown in the middle. So using these core practices induction might be used quite flexibly, considering the teacher's unique training, the specific teaching context, and their specific responsibilities. For example, other evidence-based practices, such as those specific to reading instruction for, say, elementary or high school transition, could be incorporated as they made sense. Finally, the bottom of the model demonstrates that we need to assess how well induction is working. Is the program supporting teachers' effectiveness? Are we keeping more teachers? What are mentors and new teachers' experiences with this type of program, providing important data for formative evaluation of these systems? In summary, there's clear evidence in the teacher induction literature that induction can make a difference in teachers' effectiveness and in their retention, although there's only limited data about this for special educators. But logically, this should lead to better learning outcomes. Enhancing new teachers' effectiveness will also likely increase their retention. As Johnson pointed out, teachers leave if they don't have that sense of success.
So what I'm going to do is very briefly talk through a few quick points about the design of this mentoring and induction toolkit. The tools within this mentoring and induction toolkit are really focused on the nuts and bolts of designing mentoring and induction programs. This toolkit was designed to foster collaboration between state education agencies and districts to collaboratively develop high-quality, effective mentoring and induction programs. So we are focused within this toolkit on a number of topics. So things such as mentor recruitment, selection, and assignment strategies, strategies for developing and assessing performance of mentors, beginning teacher professional learning structures, and the role of school leaders in supporting mentoring and induction programs. So this really is focused on the nuts and bolts of how you design high quality components within mentoring and induction programs. Mentoring and induction structures are only as good as the instructional practices that they reinforce. So putting into place high quality mentoring and induction structures such as high quality selection procedures or high quality mentor professional learning isn't going to get us to our desired outcomes unless we are reinforcing the right kinds of instructional practices. Now, the materials in this toolkit are intended to be used for general educators as well as special educators. You will see considerations for special education teachers integrated throughout the toolkit. But we really did want to stress that this is a toolkit that applies to both a general education and a special education audience because we wanted to include a specific focus on equity within the toolkit. So we want to make sure that we're not just focusing on mentoring and induction as a strategy to increase teacher retention, but we want to make sure that we are actually using mentoring and induction to increase teacher retention in the highest need, hardest to staff context with the student populations who need it the most. So throughout these materials, you will see attention to equity paid both in terms of students with disabilities, culturally and linguistically diverse learners, and other populations of students who are at risk for poor learning outcomes. So now I'm going to do a very high-level overview of what the toolkit contains. You can see the list here of our 5 existing modules. Each module contains an anchor presentation, which is a PowerPoint slide deck. The purpose of the anchor presentation is to just generally build knowledge around the particular topic of the module. So this module is the introduction to the mentoring and induction toolkit. It goes through some general information about mentoring and induction, its connections with teacher retention and instructional effectiveness, and really provides some of the research base around mentoring and induction. I should note that these anchor presentations contain full sets of speaker notes. All of our citations are in there, so this is intended to be a take and turnkey resource if there is a need for some knowledge building around particular components related to mentoring and induction. In addition to an anchor presentation for each module, which can be accessed here by clicking on these links for the slide presentation, there are also associated handouts and team tools with each module. So you can see beginning here, there is a list of the associated handouts and team tools by module. This is really where I think the meat of the toolkit is. These team tools are activities that are intended to be undertaken collaboratively between states and districts to really think through designing high quality components within mentoring and induction programs. There is a link on the page where you can request access to the toolkit materials. Click this link to request any of the handouts or team tools, and we will make sure that you receive those. In addition to having all of these handouts and team tools online in the near future, we have 2 modules that are currently in development. One is a module that is specifically devoted to mentoring and induction for special educators, and another is around collecting evidence of induction program success.